Okay, Gemini. Before I even get into your cards, I'm picking up on somebody coming into your life that I don't think you're going to be completely sold on at first. And it's kind of funny because I actually think this could turn into something really good. But when you first meet this person or when they first start showing interest in you, I can see you being a little like, I don't know. There's something about them you're not quite sure about. And I don't think it's necessarily because they're doing anything wrong. I think you've gotten to a point where you're much more cautious about who you let into your life. You've been through enough. You're not getting excited just because somebody shows you a little attention anymore. But here's what I keep picking up on. I think this person may surprise you because I don't think they're going to come at you really strong. This feels like somebody you get to know gradually. You talk, they reach out again, maybe you see each other a couple of times, and somewhere along the way, you start realizing there's actually something here. And I think the biggest thing for you is going to not be comparing this person to somebody you've already dealt with in the past. Because I keep getting this feeling of almost expecting the other shoe to drop. Like, okay, when does this get complicated? When do they start acting weird? What's the catch? And there may not be one. So don't make up your mind about this person too quickly, Gemini. Because somebody you initially aren't sure about could end up being very different from what you expected. All right? So let's see what's going on. Okay, Gemini. Looking at your past, I can already see why you're a little more guarded when it comes to love. I feel like you were the one carrying a relationship for a while. And maybe at the time you didn't even realize how much you were doing because you just got used to it. You were the dependable one. You were the one trying to keep things together. You were probably making excuses for this person too, like, okay, they're going through something. Maybe they just need some time. Maybe things will get better. But after a while, it just became exhausting. And I feel like you were giving this person a level of stability that you weren't really getting back from them. For some of you, you could have been taking care of everything at home, handling the practical stuff, maybe even helping somebody financially. But for a lot of you, I think this was emotional. You were the one trying to keep the relationship alive. You were the one initiating the conversations, trying to fix the problems, trying to figure out what was wrong. And eventually, I just think you got tired. And there's only so long you can keep pouring into something when you're not getting enough back. And Gemini, I don't even think this necessarily ended because you stopped caring. I think you just reached a point where you realized, I just can't keep doing this. Because being with somebody isn't supposed to feel like, another responsibility you have to take care of. And I think that's what this became. Now, whether this was one major relationship or you've had this happen more than once, it definitely changed the way you approach people now. You're not as willing to give somebody unlimited chances. You're paying attention to effort. You're paying attention to the consistency they show. And you're definitely paying attention to whether somebody is meeting you halfway, which actually brings us right into what's happening with you now. Right now, I think you're frustrated with your love life because there's a part of you that feels like, okay, I've learned all these lessons. I've been through the crappy relationships and I know what I don't want. So where is this person that I actually do want? And I feel like you've thought about this a lot, maybe more than you admit. You might go through periods where you're completely fine being single, you're doing your own thing, and you're not even worried about it. And then you'll have one of those moments where you're like, seriously, how long is this going to take? Because you don't want another relationship just for the sake of having somebody. You've already learned that being with the wrong person can feel a whole lot lonelier than actually being alone. You want something that's worth investing in. And I think there's also some frustration here because you've already invested so much time in people who didn't work out. You may even look back sometimes and think, God, I wasted so much time on that person. But I don't think it was completely wasted because you know what you're looking for now. And more importantly, you know what you're not willing to put up with anymore. The only thing I would watch here is becoming so tired of disappointment that you start expecting disappointment before somebody has actually given you a reason to. because I think that's actually what could happen with this next person. And that's where this reading really starts to shift. Okay, so in your challenge position, we have the Three of Pentacles and the letter. So somebody's going to start talking to you here. And I don't think this starts with some huge romantic moment. It actually looks pretty casual. This could literally start through a message. And maybe somebody reaches out online. Maybe you meet somebody and exchange numbers. Maybe there's a conversation through work or through somebody you both know. But there's communication here that starts opening the door. And I think this person keeps coming back. Not in an annoying kind of way. I mean, there is follow through. You talk once and then you start talking again. Maybe they ask you out. Maybe you start texting a little bit. And slowly you realize, okay, this person is actually interested in getting to know me. But your challenge is that I don't know if you're going to recognize the potential right away. You might not be completely attracted to them at first. Or maybe you are attracted to them, but you're not feeling that crazy, instant, I can't stop thinking about you kind of chemistry. And I actually think that's kind of a good thing because Gemini, some of you have had enough of that. That really intense connection where somebody comes in and suddenly you're talking all day, every day, and everything moves ridiculously fast. And you're telling each other life stories at 2 o'clock in the morning. And 3 weeks later, you have absolutely no idea what happened. This doesn't look like that. This looks like two people getting to know each other. And honestly, that might feel a little strange if you're used to relationships starting with a ton of intensity. So give this person a chance to actually show you who they are. Because once we move into your future, I understand why. Okay, so in your future position, we have the Three of Wands, the Hierophant, and the Page of Pentacles. So Gemini, this person is looking for something real. Okay, that's what immediately stands out to me. They're not coming through like somebody who just wants attention or somebody who's dating 5 different people and keeping all their options open. I feel like this person dates with a purpose, and they may actually be a little bit more traditional when it comes to relationships. They want a partner. They want commitment. For some of you, this could even be somebody who eventually wants marriage. And I don't think they're going to rush you into anything. They're willing to start at the beginning and see where it goes. Actually, I get somebody who's pretty practical here. They may be good with money. They could be focused on their career. They may have worked pretty hard to create the stability in their own life. And they're probably not somebody who's going to be to completely rearrange their life after knowing you for only 5 days. But that's only why I think you can trust what they do. If they make plans with you, they're going to follow through. If they tell you they'll call you tomorrow, you'll hear from them tomorrow. If they're interested, you don't have to spend 3 days trying to figure out whether they're interested. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest differences between this person and somebody you've dealt with in the past. You don't have to chase clarity. They're going to show you. Now, I also think there's something about this person that's outside of your usual experience. There could be some distance between initially, like physical distance. They could have a different background from you. Maybe you meet them somewhere you normally wouldn't expect to meet somebody. Or they simply aren't the type you usually go for. And I really wouldn't be surprised if your first reaction is basically I don't know. Because remember what I was picking up on before we even started this reading? You're not going to be immediately sold. But then something changes. So now we have the foggy glasses plus the gears. And this is where I think your past could mess with your perception a little bit. Because you may initially misread this person. Maybe they're taking their time and you assume they're not interested enough. Maybe they're not blowing your phone up all day and you think, okay, obviously they're talking to somebody else. Or maybe things are going so smoothly that you start looking for something to be wrong. And listen, I get it. If you've dealt with inconsistent people long enough, consistency can almost feel suspicious. You're waiting for the personality change. You're waiting for them to disappear or ghost. You're waiting for that first weird text where suddenly you're like, what the hell is this? But I don't think you should borrow trouble here. I think you should let this unfold. Because the longer you know this person, the more things start clicking into place. You're going to understand them better. They're going to understand you better. The communication gets easier. And I think there could actually be a moment where you realize, oh, I completely misjudged this. Because something that didn't necessarily knock you over in the beginning starts becoming very attractive once you see the whole person. And that's where this gets really good. So now we're at the final advice. We have the death and the white wolf. And your advice makes perfect sense with everything else we've seen. You've got to let that old relationship pattern die. Not the lessons, you need to keep those. You learn those for a reason. But there's a difference between remembering what somebody taught you and expecting the next person to do exactly the same thing. And I think that's going to be important when you meet this person. Don't make them pay for somebody else's behavior. Let them show you who they are. And trust yourself enough to know that you don't have to figure everything out immediately. That's the other thing. You don't need to know after the first date whether this is going to turn into a relationship. You don't need to know whether they're your forever person. You don't need to analyze every word they're saying for some hidden red flag. You just need to pay attention. Are they consistent? Do their actions match what they're telling you? Do you feel respected? Are they putting in any type of effort? If the answer keeps being yes, let yourself enjoy it. Because you're not the same person you were when you went through that old relationship. You're not going to ignore things you would have ignored before. You're not going to carry somebody who refuses to carry their own weight. And if something isn't right, you can handle it. Trust yourself on that. Because I really do think there's a new relationship trying to come into your life. And the funny part is, you may not recognize it as anything important when it first starts. But give this one a little time, Gemini. I think you're going to be surprised by where it goes. So I want to go ahead and talk about the bottom of the deck energies. I had the Temperance, the Two of Cups, and the Nine of Cups. So Gemini, this is why I'm telling you not to dismiss this person, because underneath everything, I've got a relationship developing here. And not just attraction. It's the Two of Cups, it's mutual feelings, mutual effort. Two people actually choosing each other. And I really want to emphasize that because your reading started with you carrying the relationship. And that's not what I see here. You don't have to drag this one along. You don't have to keep wondering where you stand. You don't have to be the one doing all the emotional work. This person meets you halfway. And I think the relationship itself develops pretty naturally. It may actually take a little time. But that's okay, because the more time that you spend together, the better this gets. And eventually I see you being genuinely happy with this person. There's almost a feeling of looking at them later and laughing at the fact that you weren't sure about them in the beginning. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I almost didn't give you a chance. Because what you were expecting love to look like and what actually makes you happy may turn out to be two completely different things. And I think that's one of the bigger lessons in this reading. You don't need somebody who gives you butterflies because you're constantly wondering whether they're going to disappear. You need somebody who makes you feel comfortable enough to put that damn phone down. Somebody where you don't have to analyze everything. You know they like you. They know you like them. And you can actually enjoy the relationship instead of constantly trying to figure out what it is. That's what I see developing here. All right, Gemini, that's what I have for you today. If this reading resonated with you, go ahead and hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love to have you here at Miss Leo's Tarot. And remember, these are general readings, so take what fits your situation and leave whatever doesn't. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and I'll see you in your next reading. Bye for now.